I guess we're live. Just needed a little confirmation there, and I guess I'll lead it. So today we're here with Flare Network and Dinero, and we're going to learn about what they're doing, what's in the works, just so we can get a better perspective of the DeFi landscape on Flare and what Dinero is building. So we're also going to have a giveaway. If you're holding Flare ETH at least 0.01, comment that in the Flare Network official YouTube channel. Just comment the last 5 of your wallet address, and we'll airdrop directly to those addresses in a few days. We'll take a snapshot. So yeah, we want to make sure you're holding Flare ETH, and if you are, you will be rewarded for it. At least 10 people will be. So to get started, introductions. I'm Dan. Have a YouTube channel. Love creating content that just helps consumers. And you guys, introduce yourselves.
Hey, I'm Kevin. I'm the founder of Coinsider. Also a YouTube channel focused on analysis of trends, projects, etc. I'm also a contributor of Retail DAO with Dan and a bunch of other people, and we're focused on building the best community for retail investors who like to take things seriously in the entire space. That's our goal. And I'm just excited to be here today to chat a little bit more about Dinero and Flare and what they're building in this space.
100%, man. Thanks for having me on. Quick intro on myself. I'm the co-founder of Dinero, working with the Flare team to get up Flare ETH, which has started off pretty strong, and excited to get into more details today.
Hey, I'm Drew. I work at Flare. I help on the DeFi side, really leading our integrations, and then eventually the post-success once we have new integrations onboarded. And I also help on the incentive side and helping really drive forward our TVL and our ecosystem as a whole.
All right, so yeah, if anyone isn't familiar, Flare Network is a layer 1 blockchain. It is in it's been live for a while. It, I think, originated as an airdrop from XRP holders. Flare became its own thing with interoperability at its core and liquidity as one of its main selling points across multiple blockchains. As for Dinero, I believe you guys were previously known as Redacted. Could you share a little bit more about what's been going on there?
Yeah, for sure. Well, we've been we were previously very far down the rabbit hole in terms of what we were working on, and quickly realized we were reaching very low glass ceilings in terms of how much we could actually scale, and then that inspired us to expand the mission into the institutional side of things. We're working with Galaxy Digital and Nomura Group and a few other institutional players, and the name was originally Redacted Cartel, and we couldn't get anything done on the institutional side with that name, so we had to change names.
Absolutely, makes sense. Yeah, I've been following Redacted Cartel originally for a while now. You guys have been building in the space for years.
We're coming up on our 3rd year anniversary, so
yeah,
that should be good fun.
Congratulations. Not a lot of projects make it 2 years, so that's pretty big.
Well, we rarely made it, so.
I mean, you guys survived. You guys survived the bear market. Yeah, not a lot of people built through it.
Yeah. I appreciate the kind words.
All right, so yeah, let's jump into Dinero and Flare ETH. So Dinero has been gaining attention for its work on Flare. Can you guys walk us through what Dinero is currently focused on?
Sure. I guess a while back we got in the loop on this concept of F assets. I think what happened, I guess, due to the nature of the airdrop of Flare and that initial seed of users, is that they were very focused on this XRP community, right? And then when Flare sort of made the made their vision clear with like F assets, it aligned pretty well with what we were actually doing, where we are, I think, are like the perfect service provider to come in and like eventually help with one of those F assets, but at least like start on it today. And then that's what we're doing with Flare ETH. So the past like 6 or 7 months, we've been building out these like critical ETH staking infrastructure out for ourselves, our retail product, as well as like institutions with those names I mentioned before, and a bunch of other layer ones and layer twos. So we're working with the Flare team, obviously, Movement, Arbitrum, ZK Sync, say a bunch of the other L1s, and all these chains have their own sort of like um, native communities that are interested in like one asset over another. But I think in a world where like you want to get F assets of all kind going, I think like coming in and like trying to plant your flag to like be that main provider for at least the ETH side of things for like the new users who come in who are interested in that is like a really good opportunity that we couldn't pass up on. And it's been great working with like the Flare team to at least get this like initial proof of concept out there, and yeah.
So just so I understand this better, Flare assets are becoming available on all these other blockchains through Dinero?
More the other way around. Maybe you want to take that one?
Yeah. So I can hop in here. So just a quick just a quick top to bottom on F assets. So F assets effectively allows you to bridge in non-smart contract assets, which is BTC, XRP, Doge, right? So BTC and XRP use these UTXO models that don't functionally have VMs, and then XRP itself as well didn't really have a VM until like the XRPL, right? And even today, building on the XRPL is like extremely difficult. So for us over at Flare, we are bridging in those specific assets, and really the goal is that we become a hub for all assets in crypto, right? Whether that is XRP, Doge, BTC, or even ETH for that matter, right? So if you look at kind of our integrations up until this point, from the start of the year till now, we're building F assets for the non-smart contract assets. We've now we had our Stargate. We got Layer 0 and Stargate integrated earlier this year as well, and as a part of that, the Flare ETH LST allows us to bridge in ETH liquidity, right? So now you have BTC, you have XRP, you have Doge, and now you have ETH via the Flare ETH LST. We also have wrapped ETH, but obviously for a lot of people and users don't want to give up the ETH staking rewards, so they opt for Flare ETH instead, right? So F assets and Flare ETH kind of come together on Flare, which is what makes this offering very unique compared to most other chains.
Thank you for sharing that. I have a question, especially for our more beginner audience members per se. So Flare ETH is doing liquid staking for liquid staking ETH on Flare, right? Can you kind of walk through people just briefly about what that is and how that works?
Yeah, for sure. So functionally what an LST is, it's a liquid staking token, right? So effectively the token is staked on that specific network. So in this case, Flare ETH will be staked on the Ethereum network that then spits out a token, right, for each Flare ETH that is minted. And then you can use that token within DeFi, right? So Flare ETH specifically is a vaulted LST. So it's not technically one-to-one, but there's essentially a receipt towards a vault that accrues rewards, which Sammy can talk more about as well. And then we've effectively bridged that over to Flare.
Exactly. So just to add on to that, like the ETH staking side of the world is obviously a very big opportunity as like a liquidity sink, right?
Mm-hmm.
On Ethereum right now, right, you can stake ETH with the validator, and that ETH is essentially bonded. It's locked with the validator until you want to pull it out and stop receiving rewards. Whereas an LST allows you to like deposit in with a certain provider, and then they will give you back almost like a stable coin, like how USDT works, but pegged to Ethereum, which is like constantly accruing those rewards so that you can go do stuff on chain with it. And the nice thing about Flare ETH is that anyone who holds ETH or wants exposure to that staking program with ETH on Flare right now can access it natively using Flare ETH, right? So they don't have to bridge back to mainnet. They don't have to lock it up and not see any liquidity until it comes out. They can just natively, one click deposit in and start receiving those rewards and playing the game on Flare without having to go back to mainnet.
I see. So that's why with Flare ETH, you're getting a higher APR than you would with liquid staking on Ethereum.
Yeah, that excess and rewards, or that spread, really, like right now, the average staking rate with Lido or some of these other names that people might be familiar with is around 3%. Doesn't really get people out of bed. Whereas with us right now, we averaged around 7.5% on the year. Right now, we're at like 6.8%. And that number comes up from an excess of things, right? So like it's made up 100% in like ETH yield. That's coming from an abstraction of yield we do on mainnet that prioritizes Flare ETH over our other assets so that it gets that boost, that almost more than 100% boost in yield. And then on top of that, you can plug it into different DeFi integrations that we have, and some that are coming up on Flare ETH for like even more on Flare for even more rewards.
So thank you for sharing that. That's really illuminating. So you mentioned the other like more well-known per se liquid staking solutions, Lido, Rocket Pool, etc. Besides the higher APY, what else, either now or in the future, it makes Flare ETH stand apart from those?
Yeah, I think that what you actually want to optimize here for users, specifically, like when you approach a big foundation, a big team, a big organization, whatever, like such as Flare, right? What you're coming to them with is actually less about, hey, we can get your users like triple the rewards of what they're getting with Lido, and actually more about like, this is why we can do this natively on Flare, and this is why it's like safe for users, and why we should be able to brand it as like a Flare ETH asset that a Flare asset that we're doing in collaboration with you guys, right? So actually the number one thing we optimize for is like safety here compared to the other assets. When you bring over Steth onto any chain, or let's say Flare, right? There's a whole variety of different bridge providers that's like providing this asset. It's unclear who the actual owner of that asset is. Infinite mint and burn privileges on these tokens that are bridged, and overall it's just a mess, right? Whereas with this, and it's a leak of value on top of that, because people have to take the TVL off in the first place to mint it. So with this, the only risk you're inheriting with any, like the same with any other cross-chain asset, is layer 0. And then with our V2 upgrade, it's not even like you're trusting us with the collateral that's keeping this asset pegged. That's all staked with our insured multi-billion-dollar validator partners and stuff. So at no time can I even take the money out of the protocol, even if I was getting wrench attacked, and God forbid. And on top of that, you're inheriting no other risk, even with the additional yield, other than just the bridging risk with layer 0. Right. So the main idea here is like, obviously, yes, get the yield as high as you can. But, once you start like going beyond that, you start crossing boundaries in terms of like, hey, maybe we'll repurpose the collateral here and like do this for extra yield, or maybe we'll introduce this new system or whatever. And that's not what you want to do, right? You want a simple system where people can just like have ETH or any other asset on Flare, stake it in here. It's not doing anything other than what I just explained like 2 minutes ago. And all the added yield on top of that is just done through abstraction, not any changes to the code.
Awesome. So yeah, benefits there. Higher yield, a safe way to do that. And are there any plans in the future of using Flare ETH as products for other tools and services in DeFi?
Yeah, 100%. I think with an asset like this, you try to accomplish like 3 things in this order, right? One is just making it available for users, right? So that they don't have to like deal with scary bridges. They don't have to like go to networks they don't know, networks they're not onboarded or familiar with already, and just make the asset available because it isn't an uncorrelated source of yield, which is pretty enticing. That's our whole institutional angle. So step one is just making the asset available, which is done. And then step two, which is happening right now, is like enabling the foundations, the pillars of like liquidity, so that this asset is readily available to like the average user for what eventually becomes step three. So like that means step two is like, integrations onto like the decentralized exchanges, getting Oracle set up so that you can always tell the price, money market set up so that you can borrow against it, use it as collateral. All those very basic things that people expect out of an asset right now is like what's happening at the moment, right? And then step three, once you have an asset that's available and it's liquid, is you start like shooting for the stars and saying like what unique native application can be built on Flare that leverages this asset that's not available anywhere else, right? But obviously you don't just get there overnight, right?
Right. So yeah, that's great to see that you guys are planning that. That's pretty much what we've seen in a lot of the other Ethereum liquid staking tools like EtherFi, Renzo. There's like a dozen of them. So yeah, it is a competitive field, but it is nice to see that someone's building something else on Flare Network, that it's not just on Ethereum, that there are more resources and tools available to people.
100%, man. And I think like this will be the case with like all the F assets eventually when they do start to come out, is like they have to work through these barriers. And I think, now that Layer 0 is like hooked up to Flare and we have the ability to like make a native uncorrelated attempt at like front running all this liquidity joining and getting all these pillars set up, it eventually makes it easier for everyone else. And it makes our lives a lot easier knowing that there's like a whole ecosystem there to build on top of.
Awesome. Thanos, can you speak about the Flare DeFi emissions program and how that works, and just give us like a broad overview of that?
Yeah, for sure. So as a part of FIPO9, our governance proposal, we approved up to 510 million Flare to be distributed within our DeFi ecosystem to help bootstrap TVL. The reason for this being is that as we start to get F assets, DeFi is going to be a lot of the core that people are using these F assets for. So to ensure that there's liquidity upon launch, we launched our first DeFi emissions program. Now we're about 6 months through that emissions program. I would imagine that we're going to have another governance proposal to continue doing this, considered over the past year and a half, we went from effectively 0 TVL to about 30 million, 35 million in TVL, and we're continuing to grow here. So this specific DeFi emissions program, alongside Flare ETH, we have been incentivizing the Flare ETH wrapped ETH pool, which has actually become a generally large pool for us comparatively to the rest of our pools on our DEX. And so we, as a part of this emissions program, we incentivize DEX pools, lending pools that Flare ETH you can now deposit into Kinetic as well to earn very high yields. And then you can use Flare ETH overall in the ecosystem if you're LPing different positions, whatnot. So this emissions program is just a start. I think that we're beginning to expand what our DeFi ecosystem looks like as a whole as well, right? So we started with just the DEX and then the lending protocol. Perps will eventually be available as well. And then from there, we'll start to get different types of lending platforms. So obviously Compound is there's Compound, there's Aave, and now I'd say like the newer types of lending protocols like Morpho and Euler V2 are, I would say, becoming pretty large within the space as well. So as we get more primitives and more different DeFi types or DeFi protocol types, I think that our DeFi ecosystem as a whole is going to continue to grow.
That makes sense. I'm just curious, from like just a regular DeFi user who may hold some Flare or want to do some staking, what's the best way for them to take advantage of this emissions program? Like, can you give some more examples about like what they should check out or try out per se?
Yeah, for sure. So if you currently hold Flare today, I would say by far the best strategy is to mint S Flare, and then you would wrap half of your Flare stack with wrapped Flare, and then you deposit it into an LP position, or you would LP the S Flare W Flare pool on SparkDex. And I would say that's probably the best way to make use of the DeFi emissions, because not only do you get Flare on both sides of a pool, meaning that you'll have a limited IL, because they're both the same asset, you would also earn emissions that we are giving to that specific pool. So if you're only holding Flare, I'd probably suggest that. Or I would wrap your S Flare and then deposit it on Kinetic as well. So those are probably the two strategies that you could go about. If you're looking for ETH exposure, you can obviously use Flare ETH and then deposit it into the Flare ETH wrapped ETH pool, right? So to really leverage the emissions program, you have to actually use the dApps. So obviously Scepter is great. They've been a fantastic LST, but for us that isn't actually leveraging the liquidity within our protocols. That's simply just staking. So we really encourage our users to try to deposit onto our different protocols like Kinetic and SparkDex, which the TVL will actually count and be able to use that liquidity as well for people that are trading or borrowing, whatnot, right?
Awesome. Very advanced technical jargon. Let's break that down for a lot of the newer investors that are just probably trying to get started with this. So there are rewards. There are a lot of rewards for you using these new DeFi applications, and that's what the rewards are termed as emissions. So there's an allotment of these emissions, which are rewards, for you to participate in these new decentralized applications, to provide funds into the liquidity pool, just so that helps facilitate more action in their decentralized finance platforms. So I might not have done a great job simplifying that towards the end, but yeah, please ask questions in the YouTube comments and we'll try to answer those later.
Yeah, like if you want the very basic explanation of this, I would just get an LST, so the Flare LST, which is Scepter, and then I would deposit it into either Kinetic, SparkDex, PlaySwap, and Gnosis, which are all just DeFi protocols that live on Flare.
Yeah, so yeah, use these platforms, extra rewards, especially while it's not as competitive. So you want to get there early, you want to use as much as you can, and the opportunities are there. Oh. All right, so vision and future plans. What are your short-term and long-term goals for Dinero, particularly with Flare ETH? I know we went over creating that DeFi ecosystem, and it takes a lot of different, milestones and products to build out. But short-term, what's next?
Yeah, I think short term is like really focused on like TVL, getting the TVL up, which like might sound like it's always the priority, but I think like even beyond the TVL, eventually like we'll be really interested in like unique wallets that are holding it, unique number of wallets that are holding it, volume that we can generate on chain, and stuff along those lines. But for now, I think like the number one focus, like short-term win, a short-term thing that would be a big win is like, getting the TVL up more than what it's at now. I mean, now it's getting really good adoption from what is available to the users. And I think like if we just keep on delivering at the pace we're delivering at, then we only see more inflows.
Makes sense. So yeah, trying to get some attention, trying to get some traction, and that's why we're doing a giveaway. So again, if you're holding at least 0.01 ETH, you would be eligible if you drop the last 5 characters of your wallet address in the comments.
0.01 Flare.
Oh, 0.01 Flare ETH, yes. So for those interested in learning more about Dinero, Flare ETH, or the Flare network, where's the best place to start?
I can probably speak best on Dinero and Flare ETH. I would start with our website, dinero.xyz. That gives you the whole rundown on who we are, and and then from there you can sort of piece together the story, the manifesto, and how we are asserting ourselves as like the best people to bring this asset to Flare. And then after that, we can probably drop some links here in terms of how to get started with Flare ETH, and make sure you use that to the best of your abilities.
And for Flare network,
talk about for Flare.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, for Flare, I would say, I mean, there's so many resources. Like our Twitter is always posting new content that we're working on. Right now, we're working on like helping explain LSTs, how F assets is going to integrate into our ecosystem. So like where I would go is our Twitter, our Discord, and obviously we have our website, which has more technical jargon. I would say if you're looking for everyday answers, definitely hop on Twitter or Discord, and we're happy to answer questions there.
Awesome. Can I ask a fun question that's may not be related to Dinero or Flare specifically, but I know y'all are deep in the DeFi space and whatnot. So just a quick question. I want to get your take on what you're most excited about within the DeFi sector in the next year. Maybe some alpha will flow, so everyone should pay attention here.
Yeah, I mean, I can go here first. In terms of specific things, I think that we're moving kind of into the second generation of DeFi that seems much more customizable than what like these original like V1s and V2s look like, right? So if you look at lending for, say, we had Compound and Aave, which you deposit an asset, and then you could borrow against the pool of lended assets, right? So you could deposit, I don't know, let's say BTC, borrow USD, buy more BTC, and you can effectively loop. There's positions you could build that were pretty interesting, but it was still pretty basic, right? Just collateral and then borrow against it. We're moving into like this second generation of what I think is like more customizable, where you can define who's like specific strategies or which assets that you're borrowing against or letting people borrow against you, right? And so like that type of lending I find pretty interesting. So like obviously Morpho and Euler L2s, or sorry, Euler V2. There's also like Pendle and like these very interesting ways of like splitting the principal token and the yield token that I find pretty interesting. So Pendle is in recent like decently well as well. And then you effectively can do these more exotic strategies that I think a lot more people are getting interested to, or like just more interested in. I would say also people are generally pretty excited about the way that Hyperliquid's going, right? The ability to trade on-chain perps, I think a lot of people have been talking about as well. And I think that we can build like a pretty similar way of doing those types of perps, especially with the way that we're thinking about scaling at Flare. So like a lot of conversations have been around specifically taking on-chain compute and moving it off-chain into like secure enclaves, which are called TEs, which there's been a lot of talk about as well. So I think overall you're starting to see a more mature DeFi ecosystem. I think it's starting to get more customizable. What I will say is I think a lot of institutions are also starting to participate. And so yeah, I'm pretty excited overall. I think that there's been some new DeFi things that have come out this year that I think that are probably worth paying attention to.
Hopefully DeFi Summer Part 2.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, I'm super excited about what Dinero is doing as well. Like, I think ETH LSTs are so functional and core to like every single ecosystem that uses the EVM. So, super excited about Dinero as well.
Did Sammy want to add to anything?
Yeah, 100%. Appreciate the kind words there. And I think on my end, for a different answer, I'm probably most excited right now about like this like quick pivot that a lot of teams are going to have to make to be a lot more like institutional friendly. I think in that like first wave of DeFi that Dennis was referring to, there's this dynamic that existed that like projects should be 100% immutable from day one and really give themselves like no space to like grow. And I think like it's at this space now where like I think we're at the forefront of this with our institutional product, where we can work directly with a lot of these institutions that are just like completely sidelined right now. Sidelined because of compliance, sidelined because of commingling issues that exist with like these pools and everything, and building products that work specifically for them so that you can really get that like creative freedom to like break through in the design space, because a lot like a ton more liquidity is unlocked. So I think like before we even get to a spot which Thanos is referring to, I think like this idea of like building like institutional products and trying to capture that liquidity is super exciting.
I actually really like that both Flare and Dinero are targeting institutional adoption and building products and services for that, rather than another pump fun platform where people just punch money into meme coins.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing this today.
It's been great, guys. Any parting words?
No, thanks for taking the time, guys. And as always, happy to answer any questions on our Discord, online, Twitter. You can always follow us and find us and ask questions.
Yeah, same on our end, and really appreciate you guys having us on.
All right.
Cheers, folks.
It's been fun.
Cheers, folks.
All right.